Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Durrani, and I'm your host. Sterling, how are you, my friend?
Drew, good. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. I've been excited about this for the last couple weeks, actually, ever since this was on the calendar, and from our last phone call. And it's just a pleasure to have you on. Um, I love your backdrop. I know the audience can't see it, but no matter what. And I always like to start with
hmm
the journey, the story. Can you tell me where you got that from? And I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, well, the no matter what hashtag is really part of the comeback. So to share the comeback, I got to share a little bit about the fall. And things started out really easy for me. I did relatively well in school. I grew up a fifth generation grocer in my family's supermarket.
Right.
And right out of college, I wanted to do something that was a little bit different. So I started a retail software company with my dad,
Hmm.
which long story short, we end up selling to a group in Silicon Valley where it becomes the Apple Pay before Apple Pay.
Oh my goodness.
It,
Okay.
and it was insane. I mean, everything you're imagining is probably right on. We
Oh
raised
my God.
$550 million, multi-billion-dollar valuation. Have
Wow.
you seen that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street?
I have seen that movie,
It,
absolutely.
it it was like a scene out of that
Yeah.
movie. Models in the office,
Right,
parties at
right,
the
right.
Four Seasons.
Yeah.
The rest I'll leave to yours and everybody else's imagination.
Got it. Absolutely.
But I thought, it's just a matter of time until this thing goes public. I cash in and I crown myself the next Steve Jobs.
Right. Absolutely.
Um, and it was living the high life for a while
Hmm.
until the housing market collapsed. And this
Hmm.
is 2008,
Right.
2010 timeframe.
Right.
And we had grown to such an extent, 700 people, offices all over the world, but we didn't have enough organic growth and revenue and cash flow to support the business that we had built or the infrastructure we had built. And when the housing market collapsed, we couldn't raise any more money, at least on terms that were acceptable to the board. And the whole thing comes crashing down. $500 million gone.
In what time frame? Was it within a couple years or was it almost overnight?
No, it was fast. It was almost overnight. I remember one meeting sitting in a conference room in Silicon Valley, and we're talking about how we're going to meet payroll that Friday.
Unbelievable.
So it happened in a matter of weeks. And,
Right.
it probably limped on for a number of months, but
Hmm.
pretty soon the bankruptcy courts got involved. I totally detached from everything involving in that company. And,
Hmm.
I end up playing this sad country song of a story where I go from literally a penthouse apartment, floor to ceiling windows, looking out over the Bay Bridge in downtown
Right.
San Francisco to my parents' house.
There we go. So how quickly did the victim mentality kick in?
Oh,
Or did it
immediately.
kick in? It was immediate. Okay.
It was immediate. Yeah, it wasn't so much the failure in and of itself. There are a lot of people involved at that company, but I had so attached myself not just to the company, but how I defined myself, what success was, what my life was going to be about.
Right.
That when the company crashed, so did I.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just like I no longer had a job, but I didn't have any cash flow.
Right.
And I was too ashamed of like the tower I had built, the success that I was riding on,
Right.
to reach out and ask for help and to do very simple things like reach out to friends and say, "Hey, I need a job.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
need help."
Yep.
And it got to a point where I literally bottomed out 6 figures of debt, and even my girlfriend broke up with me. It was like
Wow.
every single beat of that depressing country song I hit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because what you're telling me is, and I'm sure it's a lesson you learned when you tie your self-worth to an external circumstance.
Yeah.
It's like a bad game of poker where you have
Yeah.
awful cards. All you need is one bad card, and your self-worth is gone. So tell me about so you were, I think you told me you were 30 years old living at mom's
Ballpark.
or
Yeah.
ballpark. All right. So now I see you on the couch,
Yeah.
all with the pity party. Tell me what happened next.
Um, So it was really a very dark moment for me. Like it would be hard to overstate how hard that time was.
Right.
And because literally I lost everything, I felt like, this has been my shot. I had a good run. I screwed it up. Maybe I should cut this whole life thing short and I don't know,
So,
end it all
wow.
there.
So that deep, that depth. Okay.
That deep, that dark.
Okay.
And my mom said this thing when I was younger. She still says a lot of things, but she had all these like anecdotes and
Yeah.
sayings. And the one that came back to me as I'm like contemplating ending it all is the way out is through.
The way
It's
out.
actually Robert Frost quote, but to me,
It
it's
is.
always my mom.
It's your mom's quote as far as we're concerned. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
And to me, it means you go through the things you're scared of, you're
Right.
embarrassed about, you're fearful of, and what you're looking for is on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that scared me most above everything,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, was speaking in public.
You're kidding me.
Right.
You,
I'm one of the many that would
wow.
in the coffin than giving the eulogy,
Okay.
hands
Oh,
down.
okay.
And I think I was always a little bit afraid of it. But when I had lost everything that I had attached my identity and self-worth to,
Right.
I totally collapsed. Like I was so nervous to stand in front of one person, not to
Mm.
mention many.
Okay.
My face would get red and my hands would get sweaty and I would stutter. I couldn't get words out of my mouth. I mean, it was about as bad as you can get.
Okay.
And right then, as I'm having this epiphany, I'm like, okay, mom, let's put this thing to the test. The way out is through. Let's go. My email dings and it's this conference in Singapore.
Okay.
Just a general email inviting thousands, if not tens of thousands, to be attendees.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit the reply button. I said, why don't you have me speak, Beth Sterling? I still have the email. Crazy, right?
You did it scared, right?
I did
It's
it
like you
scared.
faced the
Right.
fear.
Well,
I love that.
it was a little bit of a game. Like it didn't seem real at that point.
I hear
When I
you.
wrote the email, I'm like, okay, I'm going to send it. Nobody will get back to me. Won't go anywhere. But I end up getting on the phone with the conference director.
Okay.
And in this fantasy world that I'm living in with nothing to lose and a lot to
Right.
gain, I talk
Right.
him into being not like a breakout speaker, but the keynote speaker of his conference in Singapore.
Unbelievable.
Right. And it wasn't until he sent me the legal agreement a couple of days later that it all hit me. I was like, Sterling, not only do you have this huge failure on your resume, you don't know what you're going to say, but you're terrified to do it.
Right.
And I did what I think everybody should do when confronted with a big discomfort like that, which is I committed in a way where there was no going back. I signed that agreement. I sent it back to him as fast as I possibly could before that self-doubt kind of talked me out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm reading the Think and Grow Rich, and I remember
Yeah.
the first chapter with Desire. It talks about burning the boat that you landed on the
Yeah.
island because there's no
Yeah.
going back, and you really need to do that if you have an intense desire. Don't give yourself a plan B, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In my book, I call it get a tattoo, not necessarily a literal tattoo,
Gotcha.
but you commit in a way where there's no going back. You
No
put
going back.
something on the line. You're
Yeah.
at risk.
Right.
And the key is having that commitment being stronger than whatever discomfort you're facing. It's that
Absolutely.
commitment that's going to pull you through the discomfort
Right.
to whatever's on the other side. And I knew I needed help. So I called my sister, who's right out of Georgetown University with a marketing
Right.
degree. And I
There
said,
you go.
listen, you know I'm already down and out.
Mm-hmm.
Will you help me? And she said, you're an idiot, Sterling. Of course I'm going to help you.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't want any money or anything else. I want to go to Singapore with you.
wonderful. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And thus
Wow.
began not only her helping me, but importantly, she was holding me accountable to
Absolutely.
doing the things that I wanted and really needed to do. I needed to practice. I needed
Mhm.
to write the script. I needed to create the deck. I needed to get more comfortable, at least try to get more comfortable speaking in front of people.
Right.
In the mornings when I didn't want to do it, she'd say, Sterling, let's go. 10 o'clock, we've got a meeting. You're going to do another run through, whether you want to or not.
That's wonderful. You know, when we're down and out, you first need somebody to hold you accountable until you can learn how to hold yourself accountable.
Right.
And she's a blessing to be there for you. And so tell me, how did this Singapore stuff go?
Yeah. Well, so I didn't know it at the time, but having since done a lot of research, when you're personally accountable, you're 95% more likely to achieve your goal.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And I think
Yeah. Uh-huh.
self-accountability is great and it's necessary, but it's really best used for maintenance. If you're really looking to grow in any
Mhm.
meaningful ways, like I was at that time, and like I
Right.
still am,
Yep.
you need some external accountability,
You do.
something that's a little bit stronger.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I practiced like an insane person, true,
Okay.
like hundreds, thousands of
Yeah.
times. Like
Hmm.
my sister, poor girl, she listened to it so many times, she could probably give you that talk verbatim to this
Yep.
day. And that was,
Absolutely.
almost a decade ago.
Right. Right.
And leading up to the talk, I wanted to back out. I wanted
Okay.
them to call me and say, we don't need you anymore. Or I was hoping I was getting sick. It felt like I was like back in grade school, like
Wow. Uh-huh.
wanting to be sick so I didn't have to take the test.
Right. Right. Right.
But I had made the commitment. I was accountable. And so I had built this structure without knowing it that was forcing me through kind of the eye of the needle.
Hmm. Did you feel at that time that it was unconsciously, or was it still conscious that you needed to push yourself through? Or had you practiced so much that you felt it was part of your unconscious brain to push you through, or did you have to think about it?
Well, I think there's something in all of us that calls us into the world of adventure, the world of the unknown. It's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. In
Hmm.
big ways or small ways, there's something in all of us that's kind of pushing us to create something new, to go into discomfort, to
Right.
grow beyond maybe the things that we can see from where we
Sure.
sit right now.
Yeah.
And I definitely had that.
Wow.
But I was so nervous in the weeks leading up to this thing. I wasn't
Yeah.
sleeping. I was having panic attacks. I wasn't really eating all that much.
Yeah.
And uh, the day finally comes. We had flown to Singapore. My sister's there. I'm sitting in the audience, like dreading the moment when they're going to call me up to the stage.
Hmm.
And when I did finally get up there, it's a good thing I practiced because I think I blacked out. I don't remember giving that talk.
Wow. Unbelievable how the brain works. So, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so I, stumble through it. I did do it. There's a recording of it. It actually
Yeah.
happened. I get off the stage and I think I totally bombed.
That's what you
I
were
had
thinking at the
that.
time when you got off. Okay.
Exactly. I
Okay.
had all the self-doubt had descended upon me. I felt like I'd screwed it up. I didn't really know what I said. I had tripped over myself more times than I could probably count. And I'm kind of covering my eyes and I just want to get out of that conference facility as fast as I can, chalking up another loss to my name. That's what it felt like.
Wow. Okay.
And the conference director, of course, is making a beeline towards me because I'm the keynote speaker in from the US, right? He wants to
Right.
say something. And I think he's going to say something terrible like, I want the money back, or,
Yeah.
you're not welcome back here, right? Like I really had the
Right.
doom and gloom played out in my mind. And he looks
Yeah.
me in the eyes. I'll never forget it. He says, Sterling, that's the best talk I've seen in my 17 years of doing this. To this day,
Wow.
I don't think he was in the same talk I was in.
So,
Like,
all
I think
right.
he just
So,
wanted to say something nice to me,
so at
but it
that
wasn't
moment,
incredible.
you went
Yeah.
from the all those self-doubt voices to hearing that. How
Yeah.
did it feel? Do you remember how that felt?
Yeah. I didn't believe him.
Did you question him? Are you sure you, or did you kind
I,
of?
I, I didn't have enough wits about me to question him. Like I
Good for
really
you.
was in that like cut and run
Yeah.
mode of like,
Yep.
let me just say enough to keep this guy
Yeah.
happy and move on.
Uh-huh.
And I really didn't think he was either in the room or had seen what I had just done. I really thought he just wanted to say something nice to me.
Okay.
Um, and to get me out of there without it being too awkward. But he did go on to put me in touch with all of his conference director friends. And all of a sudden I had this, at least the beginnings of the career that I have today in keynote speaking. And it
Unbelievable.
turns out my mom was right. The way out is through. We just have to go through no matter what.
And it's interesting because I was going to ask you what was your defining moment, yeah, you could say when the conference director said, I think your defining moment was your mother
Yeah.
saying the way is through, right? Because if mom didn't say the way is through, you may not have gotten to. I don't think you would have gotten to that.
I don't think I would have.
And then
No.
and if your sister had said no,
Mm-hmm.
that would have you would have collapsed. I mean, just
Totally.
So you have those
Well,
two
I'm not
strong
sure I could have
people.
collapsed more than I
More
did,
than
but
where
I
you
don't
were.
think
Yeah, I guess you can't go any lower than rock bottom. But
but I don't think I
unbelievable.
would have had the wherewithal or the support or
Mhm.
drive to do anything else.
Right. So let's fast forward. Let's
Yeah.
accelerate forward to where you are now, and tell me a little about what you're doing now, and what kind of amazing things you're helping the community, because I know you are.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. So I found this research out of the University of Michigan.
Okay.
And you felt physical discomfort before, like you stub your toe,
Oof,
and
yeah.
emotional
Right.
discomfort,
Hmm.
certainly, like maybe you break up with a loved one or lose a
Hmm.
big sales deal. Um, it turns out whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, the brain and body process it almost identically. So much so
Hmm.
you can take acetaminophen, like Advil, it will help you
Yeah.
with emotional pain.
Right.
Now, I'm not a doctor, that's not a biohack, all the disclaimers about that.
Right.
What I do suggest, though, is that we take the next step, which is if where we meet discomfort is the same anywhere, we can grow our capacity to deal with it everywhere. It's a
Mhm.
muscle you build. You go to the gym to build your biceps. Well, if you want to build your resiliency, your growth, your breakthrough results, you hunt discomfort no matter what form it's in. And as soon as I realized that, the speaking being the first thing that I went after, I started looking for discomfort anywhere and everywhere I could. Thus started the marathons, ultra marathons, cycling across the Rockies, skydiving, shark diving, trekking the Sahara, of course, more public speaking.
Yeah.
And along this journey, um, my life was being transformed by this discomfort. And it was first my sister that saw it and was like, you know what, I've
Mhm.
supported you on this. I want to go after this myself.
Okay.
And like too many young people, especially young women, she suffered from body dysmorphia and an eating disorder. And
Hmm.
I'll never forget the day she said to me, yeah, I'm going to take this on, Sterling. I'm going to be healthy no matter what. I will be healthy no matter what. And that day she signed up for a bodybuilding competition. And today she's a championship professional bodybuilder. Believe it or not, it's insane.
Unbelievable. All right. So let's think about, she was your accountability coach per se.
Yep. Yep.
Did you turn accountability coach for her when she decided to make that bold move?
I was more, I think there's a couple main roles that you need when you're growing.
Yeah.
One of those being inspiration. I think like she had seen like really the behind the scenes down and dirty of the
Right.
fear, anger, and grief that I went through. And it was that kind of inspired her to do it
Right.
herself.
Okay.
She found mentorship and accountability
Hmm.
with the professionals, with people that knew how
Right.
to
Sure.
shape bodybuilders, what you need to
Right.
do, how you do the
Okay.
check-ins, the
Makes sense.
lifts, how you eat, like all of those things. She found somebody that was not just holding her accountable to whatever she
Hmm.
said, but had a level of expertise and
Right.
professionalism to
Yeah.
get her to the goal she wanted to reach.
So you were the inspiration. Yeah, there was an interesting quote. I don't even know where I got this from, but it's like the worst advice is bad advice, and bad
Mm.
advice usually is free.
Yeah,
Now, you got good free advice from your sister. She was astute enough to find the advice for the bodybuilding from the experts and took the inspiration from her brother. And
exactly.
so I
Yeah.
want to ask you a little about, we talked about self-worth. Right
Mm.
now, I think it might be safe to say that your self-worth isn't contingent upon external circumstances anymore. Tell me about your self-worth and how it's grown.
Well, it's still a journey. I mean, there are some things that I notice. I'm like, wow, I was really attached to that particular thing.
Hmm.
But starting with my sister, there was then somebody that I had known from my professional past, and he started a beef jerky company, coming over as a Cambodian refugee, didn't
Okay.
have any money, flat
Yeah.
broke, didn't speak the language, and going through at least an early version of this system, he's selling more Cambodian beef jerky than he can keep up with. He just bought a Lamborghini, believe it or not. I'm
Unbelievable.
looking at pictures on Facebook. I'm like, this guy's crushing it.
Geez, I'm in the wrong
Uh,
business. Got to go in the beef jerky business. My
right.
goodness.
And then like one person after another started reaching new health goals and professional goals, creating new businesses,
Right.
creating new sales records, starting new um, families, community initiatives. And it was in that
Right.
moment, Drew, that I realized I've been so like consumed about myself. I started
Mhm.
this thing just to dig myself out of the hole.
That's true. Right.
But my life isn't about those things. It's about supporting others to achieve their big goals, their dreams, their aspirations, no matter what they were.
Right.
And I think where I would have based my self-worth, really did base my self-worth on money and who I was dating and where I lived in the past. Now it's much more contingent, not just on where I am and what I'm doing, but the impact that I'm making with others. So it's totally shifted from something that's, um, let's say, concrete and dollars and cents, to
Right.
something that's really based in the most important things in life, like love, gratitude, joy, and courage. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
It totally makes sense. And the service piece is really brings us to success. The more we can
Mm,
serve and pick people up, that's how we should be measuring success. Success isn't how much money you have. It's the amount of service you can provide others. To me, that what makes me or us successful. The money follows as
yeah.
it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, coming from somebody that's thought about exiting this life a little bit early
yeah.
and backed up by research, no matter how much the world changes, no matter how much your life changes for the
Right.
better, or for the worse,
Hmm.
the things that are most important to human beings, proven by deathbed research again,
Yep.
is not your bucket list, and it's not your
No.
bank account. It's not the car you drive or the career you have.
Mhm.
It's the courage to live true to what's most important. And what's most important to human beings are those things that, ironically, no matter what happens in the world, can never be taken away from you, like
Right.
love, connection, courage, joy. Like, it's those things that are most important to us, but we very easily lose sight of it in the kind of crazy modernity that we live in these days.
It's so true. I mean, I was in healthcare for 24 years, and reading the
Yeah.
research on the death and dying with their regrets.
Yeah.
Many also say not really being themselves. We
Hmm.
we we tend to people please because we have that exterior we want to show the world because we think the
Right.
world wants to see it. I'm telling you, the world right now is craving authenticity
Yeah.
and authenticity 24/7. Don't worry about the reaction of how people are going to react if you're yourself. In a way, I have learned how to reframe rejection. If
Mm.
somebody doesn't like me for who I am,
Yeah.
I thank them because I don't want that toxicity in my life. And I think that's the direction we all need to go in is build your self-worth for
Mm.
yourself, not based on somebody else.
Yeah.
And so last two questions before we wrap up.
Yeah.
And I always ask you, and you kind of answered it. So I'm going to ask two questions. One,
Uh-huh.
what, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self? Let's say younger self is your 10-year-old. That'll be the first
Hmm.
question. The second is, before you started your business way, way, way back then, what advice, knowing now, would you give to your young business self? So personal self for life, and then business self, so we can share with the audience what you tell them.
Yeah. So thinking about those two things, it's actually the same message for me,
Wonderful.
which is failure's okay.
Uh-huh.
Messing up is okay. Looking bad is okay. And not only okay, but it's necessary on your journey for growth. My book's called Hunting Discomfort. I talk a lot about discomfort. And the thing that I hear most from
Right,
people is, Sterling, you got to look at my relationships, my bank account, my business. I don't need to hunt discomfort. I'm surrounded by it.
right,
And my answer is always the same, which is you're not hunting discomfort. You're living with it. You're rationalizing why you have it. You're placating the situations around you. And that's
right.
certainly what I did in my younger life. Had I hunted discomfort from an early age, been okay with the uncomfortable things,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, well, my life would have been very much different.
Hmm.
But all the same, I'm very grateful for the journey that I've been on to get where I am now.
I definitely hear you. Well, that's wonderful advice. Yeah, we can't live with regret. Yeah, I often say we need to replace regret with um, with forgiveness.
Mm,
Forgive ourselves for any personal discretion and forgive others for what they did. Because if we live in regret, that causes a lot of depression. So,
yeah.
so go with forgiveness, and I say be grateful for right now,
Yeah.
you know, and go after fear. Hunt that, like you said, and do it scared.
Yeah.
That's how we grow. So I want to thank you. I do want to ask you, tell me a little about your book, how we can get it, and then other things that you're working on that you'd like the audience to know, so they can have more of Sterling Hawkins.
Yeah. Well, the best place to find out about the book and everything that we're up to is huntingdiscomfort.com. And what I do is really work with a lot of businesses, growing businesses, established businesses, some of the biggest businesses in the world, to help their leadership and their teams to achieve results regardless of the circumstances. And there's a lot of them these days, right?
Yeah,
We've got
absolutely.
pandemic fallout, we've got a looming depression, we've got inflation, we've got global instability, really a universal instability.
Right.
And I work with these teams and leaders to create the results that they want in their business and their life, no matter what they're facing. One of the things that I would suggest that you can also find on huntingdiscomfort.com
Mm-hmm.
is a quick 15-question quiz. What's standing in the way of the results you want is not just hard work. It's not money. It's not time. It's not the connections you have. It is discomfort. And as you can identify discomfort going through this 15-question quiz, and it doesn't cost anything. I'm not selling anything here.
Right.
It will give you what that main discomfort is. There's 5 of them that stand in the way for all of us, but there's one that's really stopping whatever it is you want next. It will identify that for you and give you a pathway to hunt it, to break through it, so you're forever free of it.
Well, that's wonderful, and I know I'll be the first to go up there and answer those questions because I'd like to
Great.
find out what mine is. All
Yeah,
right,
well, you have to let me know what you get.
I will let you know. So, thank you so much for coming on, and just I want you're going to tell the audience one last thing before we go. What was Mom's suggestion?
The way out is through.
The way out is through. Bless you, Sterling. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate you.
All right, appreciate you too. Take care. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.